Hi, I'm Johnny Buschardt, Senior Manager of Training and Consulting with the Oklahoma Center for Nonprofits here in the Tulsa office. Today we're going to be talking about the EIDL loan offered by the SBA. EIDL stands for Economic Injury Disaster Loan. It is a loan that was in place prior to the COVID-19 disaster, but one that has been greatly expanded by the SBA in light of the current climate. So today we're going to talk about the application process, and how you can get the funding set aside by Congress for yourself and your organization. Before we start off, I'd like to remind you all of our toll-free helpline, 1-800-388-1798. At any time, feel free to reach out to my colleagues, Jerry Wright or DJ Thompson, both of whom's contact information is on your page, for any questions you may have specific to your organization or with regard to the EIDL loan program in general. You can also reach out to us regarding any of the other SBA programs, whether it's the PPP loan, the mid-size loan, express loans. We'd love to help you out in any way that we can. As our disclaimer, this information that I'm about to provide to you is our best understanding of the information. However, federal, state guidelines and policies are being constantly revised and updated. In some cases, those are changing hourly. In other cases, those are changing daily. In some cases, they're changing weekly. However, the current information that we have as of April 15th, 2020 is up to date and accurate. We've been on several calls of late with Secretary of Commerce Sean Copeland here in the state, with the Oklahoma division of the SBA, with Senator James Langford, who helped kind of craft the bill. So we do feel that our information is up to date, but realize that may change from time to time. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, or feel free to visit sba.gov. You can see there's an email and a phone line right in front of you. You can reach out to the SBA directly if you have questions on your loan specifically. A quick disclaimer about the EIDL loans or any of the SBA loan funding you may receive. Should your nonprofit apply for and receive any SBA loans, the repayment requirements or forgiveness contingencies are between you and the lending institution. While the EIDL is administered by the SBA, it will be administered locally by a lending institution. So the final agreements, documents required, policies needed to follow may be specific to that institution. So I would make sure that you're very clear on those upfront, because it may save you some time and possibly some frustration in the future. So as we all know, the SBA offers a fairly wide line of disaster relief funding available to small businesses and nonprofit organizations. Today we're going to focus on the EIDL funding. You can see the link in front of you now. This is where to go to apply for an EIDL loan. EIDL loans can only be applied for through the SBA. They cannot be applied for through a local lending institution. That's the big separation between the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP that we've referenced, and the EIDL or the EIDL loans. You can only apply for an EIDL loan online at the link given there. The estimated time for completing the entire application is 2 hours and 10 minutes. That's the time given by the SBA. Our organizations have found the typical time, providing you have the financial information they require, is going to be about 35 to 40 minutes to complete the application. And we have had some folks saying they've completed it in as little as 25 minutes. Either way, make sure you gather your financial documents. Your 990 would be a great place to start prior to beginning the application process, because it will save you some time in the long run. So as a response to the COVID-19 crisis, the SBA opened up the EIDL loans to small businesses, to local, national and local nonprofit organizations, and church and religiously affiliated institutions. Prior to this time, nonprofits and church and religious affiliated institutions had not been allowed to apply for EIDL. So this truly was a historic step by Congress in terms of offering relief to organizations like ours. So all nonprofits and small business owners can apply. You can also apply. A lot of folks have heard about a $10,000 advance on the EIDL loan. The $10,000 advance, you can give an advance up to $10,000 at a rate of $1,000 per employee. So if you have 3 employees, that advance is only going to be $3,000. If you only have yourself as an employee, that advance will only be $1,000. And if you have 12, 15, any number greater than 10 of employees, you're still going to be limited to $10,000. The EIDL advance, emergency advance, is not repayable. It's forgiven. That is the first $10,000 you do not have to repay to the EIDL. The rest of the loan will convert to an actual loan, which we'll talk about terms here shortly. But the important thing to remember is that first up to $10,000 of $1,000 per employee is considered an emergency grant. Now, the SBA guidelines say that you should be able to receive that within 72 hours of your application. We have not seen any type of turnaround time like that. Most of the organizations we work with have applied a week, 2 weeks, even 3 weeks ago, and they have not gotten their advanced funding yet. But on the application, it will ask, would you like to be eligible for an advanced fund, to receive advanced funds, emergency advanced funds, I believe they're called, and you will just check that box, yes. The loan rate outside of the advanced funds is 2.75% with up to 30-year terms, and up to $200,000 of this loan does not need a personal guarantee. Because it is a loan, the rest of it will. They will ask for personal information that you'll need to provide, but that's simply a call that your organization needs to make in conjunction with your board of directors and your executive director. So in order to be eligible for the EIDL program, you have to be a small business or nonprofit with less than 500 employees. If you are a nonprofit, you have to be a 501c3, a 501c19, which are veterans organizations, or a tribal-owned entity as outlined specifically in the Act. Again, the EIDL loans should be made available within a few days of your application, though we have seen an average turnaround time now stretching into weeks simply because the program is so new. Again, we do want to emphasize the $10,000 advance so many folks have heard about. That is $1,000 per employee up to 10 employees. And we do want to mention for the first time in SBA history, churches and religiously affiliated organizations are eligible for this funding program. There were some questions as to the SBA loan amounts. The current maximum amount of an EIDL loan is $2 million. Again, you can receive $10,000 as an advance. Some folks had heard that the first disbursement may only be $25,000. We have not confirmed that, but we have confirmed that first $10,000 advance is $1,000 per employees up to $2 million, or $1,000 per employee up to 10 employees. And the overall EIDL maximum amount you can take is $2 million. So when you fill out the application, and I do have one, I apologize for not having it in front of me, but we do have a mock application we can send you. It looks just like this. They're going to ask you to verify a few things about your organization, that you're less than 500 employees or members, rather, I'm sorry, 500 employees, that you are eligible because you've been adversely affected by COVID-19, that you were in operation prior to February 15th, 2020, things along those lines. Then they're going to ask for your business information. They're going to ask for who owns your business. Now, as a nonprofit, we don't have owners. We've been recommending listing your nonprofit saying an N/A not 501c3 organization in the owner's line. Some banks on the PPP site came back and said, hey, you have to provide owner's information. When they list the business owned by entity question, first of all, that's going to be no. They're going to ask one question, are you owned by an entity? Nonprofits are not owned by entities, so you don't need to put that. Then the next question is individual owner or agent. This is key because they're asking for the name, social security number, and contact information for an individual owner or agent. That or agent part is specific to nonprofits because, as I said earlier, we do not have owners. So they will be asking for personal information, but that is an agent who is acting on behalf of the organization to complete and submit the form. So understand that someone, we recommend the executive director or the board chair, be providing that information. You will have to provide it, but again, you're not making yourself personally liable for this economic injury disaster loan. You're simply acting as an agent for the organization that is applying for the loan itself. They'll be asking for additional information, your last year's gross revenues, cost of goods sold, which in many nonprofits is going to be zero, your cost of operations, which is going to be all your expenses for the year. You'll plug all those things in, again, probably from your most recent 990. Hopefully you have your 2019 990s done. Then there will be a checkbox, I'd like to be considered for an advance of up to $10,000. You will want to check that. That is the part that the up to $10,000 that can be forgiven and will not need to be repaid. The rest of the amount of that will be on that up to 30-year term at 2.75% interest that we talked about. Then you're going to have to fill in where to send the funds. Some folks have not felt comfortable entering their bank information on any type of website form. If you don't, the SBA will call you because the form is incomplete and you will have to give that information over the phone to someone. We've heard reports of folks not answering the call because they thought it might be a scammer. It actually was the SBA trying to get the information that they should have completed on the form. So if you do not provide banking information, someone will call and ask you for that. If you don't provide any information, someone won't. But it may also delay your application by having to find someone someone take the time to call you. So we recommend filling out the information completely and wholly as you can, because you don't want this process to be delayed any further. Then you're going to verify all of the information that you just filled out and you'll submit the application. Again, all of that is done online. You will not need to approach your bank regarding the EIDL loan because these are administered solely through the SBA. So what are the loan parameters? We talked a little bit about this information earlier. The maximum EIDL loan amount is $2 million. Now the initial disbursement may only be $25,000. They may stack it out saying, hey, you can get $25 right now and the rest of the $2 million is set up like a line of credit. That's simply a cash flow issue for the SBA at this point. Originally, they had assumed funding for 1 million businesses. I believe they said over 4 million applied in the first several days. So the $360 billion set aside to fund these programs, there is a cap on it, but you want to make sure that you're asking for enough to keep your organization in operations in line with the parameters. And you can only do that by providing the proper information. So at no point in the EIDL loan process will you ask for an amount. They're going to take your gross revenues, your operating expenses. They will call you and say, you qualify for this much. And at that point, you'll decide if you want to take the EIDL loan or not. Again, the maximum amount you can ask for is $2 million, or the maximum amount they can offer is $2 million, but you will not be able to list a specific requested amount in the application because that isn't how it works. Payments on coronavirus EIDL loans are deferred for 1 year, principal and interest, so payments will not start for a year. Interest will not be accruing during that year, but they will start 12 months after your funds were received. Up to $200,000 can be approved without a personal guarantee. Approval can be based on a credit score. No first-year tax returns are required. You do not have to prove that you couldn't get, you were ineligible for credit elsewhere. That's another thing that they're waiving. And then no collateral is required for loans of $25,000 or less. For loans of more than $25,000, general security interest and assets will be used as collateral instead of real estate. Again, this is a loan. It is a loan at a great interest rate, and it is a loan designed to get small businesses and nonprofits and churches and religiously affiliated organizations money quickly to sustain their operations, but it is in fact a loan. Aside from that, up to $10,000, $1,000 per employee for 10 employees. Aside from that, all of this will need to be repaid. And the borrowers must allow the SBA to review your tax records. They will request your tax records, they will review them, and that will be part of their loan process, so don't be surprised when that is requested. As we mentioned, there's a $2 million maximum loan. The initial funding may be limited to $25,000. That is the initial funding disbursement. The rest of the loan will, again, be acting as a line of credit you can draw on as needed. The $10,000 advance does have to not be repaid. If that first disbursement of $25,000 comes in, that first up to $10,000, $1,000 per employee up to 10 employees, can be considered an advance. The other $15,000 can be used for operational costs. The one thing that the $10,000 advance, up to $10,000 advance, cannot be used for is the same purposes of a PPP loan. The PPP loan is designed solely to cover, well, 75% to cover your payroll and your payroll-related expenses. So the SBA would prefer you get a PPP loan and then use the EIDL loan for operations. The EIDL loan can't be used for payroll or PPP expenses. It can be used for things like working capital, accounts payable, notes payable, things along those lines, but it cannot be used for the same purposes as of a PPP. As a nonprofit organization, you can apply for both. As a small business, you can apply for both. As a church, you can apply for both. You're heavily encouraged to apply for both, but you can't use that $10,000 advance or up to $10,000 advance, and a PPP for the same purposes, because then they'll wind up canceling each other out. We want you to keep in mind that further revisions are possible. And again, we wanted to emphasize EIDL loan applications are submitted directly to the SBA. You will not go through your financial institution for a SBA EIDL loan. You will not go through any other organization or any other middleman or any other funding offer for an EIDL loan. These are only allowed to go through the SBA. So make sure that when you are applying for the EIDL loan, you're applying directly through the SBA website. Here we've listed the Oklahoma District Office of the SBA. It's their website, a email to reach them, and a phone number. They are very overwhelmed right now, just as the Oklahoma Unemployment Security Commission is, just as the SBA nationally is. So please show some patience, have a little grace when you're trying to call them back, because they are overwhelmed as we are, but they are returning phone calls and emails on a regular basis. So don't hesitate to reach out to them. Or of course, you can reach out to myself and my colleagues here at the Oklahoma Center for Nonprofits. Because the parameters have been widened so greatly, the application process for small businesses is the exact same as it is for nonprofit organizations, the exact same as it is for churches and religiously affiliated institutions. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us if we can answer any questions specific to your organization or about the EIDL process in general, because we love to help you out in any way we can. Stay safe, stay strong, and hopefully we'll all get through this together. Thanks.